All throughout the wasteland, different societies have risen up from the ashes of the Great War, from republics to dictatorships and secret societies. But none are quite as special as ours, the Texan Arms Association. Our system, built upon mutual and voluntary obligation with no government but instead a high degree of power being held by corporations and wealthy families, has made us the master gunsmiths in Texas and the freest in the whole of the wasteland. The only thing holding us back is the tight supervision the Republic of Rio Grande have put on us, implementing regulations, taxes and restricting the sale of weapons to some consumers. However, through our economic expertise, we have recently been able to gain a place of nominal freedom. There is also a few other issues with our decentralized society, and that is the lack of doctors and clinics, who was retreated by the Republic once we gained our partial freedom. At least Todd Howitzer, the top guy in our association, the man who gave us our independence from the Mexicans and the man who will keep this all together, has a plan to do just that, keep our association growing. We have for a long time bought up the means of production in our realm, centralizing the manufacturing around one company instead of several. This allowed us to generate enough wealth, together with finding a pre-war caps factory, to invest into further wealth development. Construction loans were issued to our free population and smaller companies, and railroads were constructed to help with the transportation of our produced goods. Through some assets remanagement, we further boosted our factory construction, and our economic success could already be seen throughout our estates. This allowed us to begin fixing the healthcare issues, starting by constructing new privately owned clinics and training doctors to work in these new buildings. Unfortunately, bigger crackdowns on our trade from Guerra, the leader of Rio Grande, has forced us to return to economic building, as we could run out of funds if not. But some of our barons didn't accept the new regulations, and without Todd being informed, launched a raid across the river on the capital of Rio Grande, destroying much of the city. This quickly escalated to us being forced to mobilize our security militias in anticipation of Rio Grande having enough, invading us and dismantling everything we've built up. So while we now technically have our full independence, we must prepare for war against a much stronger Rio Grande army. We started by constructing new arms factories at the same time as we expanded our company paramilitaries, equipping them with additional demolition equipment. We also hired the cheapest group of militias to more centralize our army. Meanwhile, Guerra had stepped up his efforts as well, creating a radio station, spreading propaganda and mobilizing Rio loyalists in our territories. But despite this setback, we continued our preparations, training more troops, building outposts and instructing our troops to stand their ground so that they can't cross the river. We also returned to our healthcare problem, as we could put together the final part of our plan with the help of statistics. But before we could finish it by constructing our first hospital, Rio Grande reached out with an offer to us: to lose our freedom in return for no war. We of course declined, which led to an immediate declaration of war from Rio Grande. With the attacks over the river starting just as the war began, we mobilized our economy as much as possible and started the construction of even more hasty fortifications. Their attacks were many but didn't cover the whole river, which allowed us to redeploy some of our forces to the more heavily attacked areas. So while they do outnumber us, they don't necessarily do it locally, which has made it possible for us to hold off their first attack and inflict close to 300 casualties, which is a lot when your war support and stability is horrible. So the fortifications could be built in time, and we could continue arming more militias and producing more weapons to arm our ever-growing army. During this time, the enemy attacks continued as usual, and over 1,000 casualties had been inflicted, with their attack growing less and less effective. So we decided to start working towards ending this war, and not by simply signing a white peace due to our stalemate. No, we must try capturing Gloria and ending the war on a win. And so we started developing bigger and better weapons, culminating in power armor suits who will lead our first offensive. We also found 20 old aircrafts who will support us from the sky. Then, due to the constant enemy attacks and our expansion to more than 4,000 deployed men, we were forced to start recruiting more volunteers. But by adding signing bonuses, we could quickly recruit twice our current casualties. So everything was now ready for our first offensive, and our generals had a great plan for it. Since the enemy doesn't know we have strengthened ourselves, we will fool them into expanding their front and then attack their flank when it is vulnerable. And the perfect area is in the south. Just as planned, the Rio army entered our trap, capturing Laredo that they thought was free. But as fast as more divisions arrived, we counterattacked the city, and with the help of our new air force and power armored units, we succeeded in liberating it, cutting off a substantial amount of the enemy army. It took time to destroy all the encircled units, but by further splitting them up, we gained the upper hand locally and could finish them off despite their efforts to exploit our not so protected north. With this huge victory, we have now not only inflicted over 10,000 casualties, but our army is bigger than theirs. So why not try an offensive into their lands, and if it goes really well, maybe the idea that has been circulating recently of spreading our arms association to Mexico can become a reality.
Yes, we'll rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We will rally from the hillside, we'll gather from the plain, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah, down with the traitor, up with the star. While we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
Gloria has been captured, and while not even half of their country lies under our control, they are fully destroyed. Our army is twice as big as theirs, and their economy is in shambles. So all that is left is one small push and the Republic will crumble and be replaced by our free contractualism. This offensive was to the city of Carbon Pueblo, which once fallen forced the capitulation of the Republic. Just like planned, we annexed all the states, greatly expanding the territory, industry and resources of our association. However, we won't be able to realize the potential of these new territories for quite long, because first we must make sure that our yellow rose of Texas is able to bloom. Our thorns have already shown their effectiveness, so any invasion is unlikely. Therefore, we can return to our economic focus, where during the war we were able to initiate mass production. Together with a great R&D and enough resources to sustain our growth, the roots of our rose have become strong enough to sustain the flower we want. And this allowed us to finally finish the hospital we had started construction on, bringing us a modern healthcare sector. Together with Todd's master diplomacy spreading our arms sales to new clients, a new golden age for our association has started. For example, a big new customer was Pecco's colony, who are in dire need of weapons against the threat of Caesar. But this not only granted us money, but also friends in unexpected areas. Most notably with the mutants of Austin, who currently face a war of attrition against Shale's army. Another group of mutants who have been a pain for our business. So if we were to help out Austin against them and join the Texan Economic Union, who after the destruction of the Texan Brotherhood is now their faction, we would be able to negotiate the transfer of these lands to us. Because they include an old forge we could get up and running to produce metal for our weaponry. Austin agreed to our offer, and so we assembled our army and declared war on Shale before he could realize what happened. So with no defenses against us, we could march north without meeting any resistance. Our goal quickly became to reach the river in the north to cut off their army against Austin. They did try to retreat and assemble a defense against us, but it was too late and our power armor divisions eventually reached the river. We first put our focus on trying to destroy all the encircled troops, but realizing they could hold on for weeks, we turned our focus to the west instead. Because here the garrisons were scarce and we could arrive to their capital without any resistance, making them surrender after we captured Odessa. Just like agreed upon, all territory was transferred to Austin while we got our forge. We immediately started rebuilding it and integrating at least the main state into our association. We also began the process of joining the Texan Economic Union, where we fortunately were more than welcome. Immediately after joining, Austin shared military plans with us, plans to declare war on the Mexican AI to liberate Texas. And we play an important part of it, since we can cut off land access to Texas for them. So, as our yellow rose blooms due to our growing income and new friends, we also prepared for the most important war for Texas. And we did have a lot of time to prepare. Todd could take a rest and we could finally deal with the Rio loyalists, as our potential has been realized. The rose stands stronger than ever and now nothing can bring it down. We even had the time to prepare more armories to start producing radios that we will soon add to our catalogue of arms. But before we could, the Santa Ana AI declared war on us, realizing we were about to do it against him. We immediately called in our true allies so that we outnumbered the Mexican industry and deployed divisions. With this reassurance, we initiated our plan, finding a gap in the robots' front which allowed us to reach the Gulf of Mexico without a single battle. With Austin also attacking everywhere across the front, the AI army couldn't effectively redirect their troops to the most vulnerable area, which led us to further secure it and even encircle our first 2 divisions. We now had to decide whether to move south to their course or north to halt them from retreating all their troops through the Texan ports. After careful thought, we decided to take the safe option of at least securing the Alamo and Port Lavancha before turning south. The front to the port was mostly open, so together with the Austin mutants and despite losing a battle against the robots, the port was secured. But we still have to move a lot further to the line in order to encircle the Alamo. This was where we met the hardest resistance yet, as their divisions were stronger than ours. Fortunately, we outnumbered them, so eventually we started winning the battles until we reached the line, encircling more than 10 enemy divisions. In other areas of Texas, even greater success was seen, as Assassin City had overrun most AI defenses and had put swaths of land under their control, as well as terminated any realistic way for Santa Ana to hold on to Texas. After clearing out all the encirclements, mostly thanks to the Austin army, we moved south to conduct the final strike. Most of the robot army had already been destroyed, so mostly what we had to do was to move to their major cities and unplug the Santa Ana AI. Their capital was captured, and by using our garrison of Armageddon Estacion, we could encircle Rio Grande City, giving us free reign in the south. They would of course try to deploy more divisions, but with them too being encircled, they simply had no chance to win anymore. La Pesca was captured, and eventually after some weeks the refinery was entered, where we found the hardware of the Santa Ana AI. We didn't destroy it, however. Instead, our scientists put it in a virtual world to study it and scrape its data. Through this process, the last part of the robot army was shut off and peace was established. In Texas, we annexed its southern states, while Austin and Assassin City split the rest. And in Mexico, we annexed a third of it, while establishing 2 puppet regimes in the more southern regions. Now, during the war, even better things had happened at home than our great territorial expansion. We had started integrating the old Rio Grande territories, since this war against an evil AI somewhat united us. All the states along the river, including Gloria, were cored, and as a consequence, investments flooded in. It started with mostly agricultural investments, but soon we were building railways left and right, which allowed us to import equipment from our more developed states and exploit resource reserves that the previous Rio Grande government probably didn't even know existed. It also allowed our growing population back in our first estates to make their way to Mexico, akin to the westwards expansion of Manifest Destiny. Naturally, this texification of Mexican lands allowed us to integrate them easier, as even the locals were starting to enjoy the freedom of our system. However, while we had a lot more to do in the former Rio Grande states, Todd was made known of a fact that put our focus on something completely different. The scientists who were examining the Santa Ana AI had found data showing the location of still working nuclear missile silos. They are located in another AI's nation, that of the Impero Mexicano. And since this AI is mostly the same as the Santa Ana one, we are confident we could beat it as well in order to get our hands on the nuclear missiles. But to actually be sure, we started training 10 more divisions who are now all equipped with radio, so that our total deployed manpower will reach over 10,000. But once again the AI striked first, since our puppet had made them declare war on them. Still confident though, we launched an all-out attack in the north, spearheaded by our 2 power armor divisions. The breakthrough happened almost immediately, leaving big gaps in the front, which we used to march south in order to encircle their troops. But in the process and by being too confident, we got one of our power armor divisions encircled. Not that it really mattered, it is extremely outdated and our offensive could continue despite it, especially once we called in Assassin City to help us out, so together the encirclement was realized nonetheless. We now only had to continue until reaching the missile silos, where our scientists immediately began working on restoring the nukes, and then capture the final settlement, defeating our second insane AI so far. But there are still two left, Zapata and Moctezuma. And to help defeat them, Todd and several other industrialists have started development and construction of war aircraft, so that we can relive the superiority we had when our 20 airplanes shattered Rio Grande units. We did get a few deployed before starting the war against Zapata. Not that it really mattered, since we were superior nonetheless. And this time we weren't overconfident, since we took our time to split their territory in two, and only once the main part of their army was destroyed in the northern encirclement did we launch an all-out attack that ended the rest of their resistance. This left only the Moctezuma AI left, which fell even quicker. All we had to do was to encircle Tlaloc's lair and then capture the two border cities of Leon and San Luis Potosi. So with all the AIs destroyed, we officially annexed most of their territories, while establishing a third small puppet regime in the most southern states. And with that, our adventures in the south are over, since if we would continue further, we would interfere in a war that currently grants us a lot of profit selling our weaponry. However, we still have to use our privately owned recreational nukes on someone, and who better than against the ever-growing threat of Caesar's Legion? Because while we currently make a lot of money selling to both the Republic and the Legion, if Caesar manages to win, which he realistically could, it would be over for the whole wasteland. So we started preparing for our biggest war yet, by sending our soldiers to our only border and coring the last of Rio Grande territory so we can mobilize their people against Caesar as well. But since we want to retain the surprise element, we don't have much time for more. Our scientists haven't even finished making our two nukes operational. And the element of surprise we got, because as we declared war only 7 legionary divisions had gathered, compared to our 40 and 250 aircrafts. So we took our chance and attacked full throttle. The river was crossed almost immediately because it wasn't even fully protected. And with that, the only thing that could save them was a defense in depth, which they didn't have. So despite some more troops arriving, we destroyed about as many, and with the front growing larger and larger, they couldn't possibly defend it all. So they had to send in more and more reinforcements, which only made us more determined to attack faster. Continuing to outnumber them, we could reach all the way north to Juarez City. From here we focused our offensive more to the west, so that we don't run the risk of being outflanked. It was here things started to get a bit tougher, but still not hard enough for us to halt, and we could continue our advancements with some encirclements, all the way until reaching the river between us and Caesar's two allies. Since we continued to outnumber Caesar's forces, we decided to continue further north with the goal to reach the huge city of Phoenix, which would split Caesar from his two allies. However, since this will massively expand the front line, we took it far slower than our previous offensive, making sure to encircle as many legionary divisions as possible. Considering we outnumbered them so much, this was extremely easy, and we scored encirclement after encirclement, especially thanks to our air force. Plenty more advancements later, we are only one big push away from Phoenix, and having inflicted over 20,000 casualties on Caesar alone already, he won't be able to put up a strong defense. Unfortunately, we were a bit wrong, so while we did reach Phoenix, we could only hold the north central for a short while before being pushed back to the suburbs of the city. So with this loss in mind, which probably boosted legionary morale, we decided that it was time to finally use our secret weapon, the nukes. Our scientists have been hard at work developing the air force capable to deploy them, and they have succeeded. So with air superiority over Flagstaff, their capital, we sent in our bomber airplane, which dropped the first post-Great War nuke. And so with the destruction of their capital, we restarted our offensive, this time with the hope to destroy the Legion.
There's a yellow rose in Texas that I am going to see. Nobody else could miss her, not half as much as me. She cried so when I left her, it like to broke my heart. And if I ever find her, we never more will part. She's the sweetest little rosebud that Texas ever knew. Her eyes are bright as diamonds, they sparkle like the dew. You may talk about your Clementine and sing of Rosalie, but the yellow rose of Texas is the only girl for me. Where the Rio Grande is flowing and the starry skies are bright, she walks along the river in the quiet summer night. I know that she remembers when we parted long ago and promised to return and not to leave her so. She's the sweetest little rosebud that Texas ever knew. Her eyes are bright as diamonds, they sparkle like the dew. You may talk about your Clementine and sing of Rosalie, but the yellow rose...
Victory, Caesar and all his allies have been completely demolished, and our free system has been spread throughout our more than 5 new puppets all the way north to New Sterling, far away from Texas. And so maybe it would be fitting to change the name of our Texan Economic Union to something else. But unfortunately it's mutant bureaucracy is making that difficult. So instead Todd has decided to rename our association because the Texan Arms Association doesn't really cut the bill anymore. Instead we will from now on be known as the South Texan League, the most free and prosperous place in all of the wasteland. So thanks so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed and see you in the next video.
Her eyes are bright as diamonds, they sparkle like the dew. You may talk about your Clementine and sing of Rosalie, but the yellow rose of Texas is